Huh? Trespassers detected! You, stay where you are. Do not move or extreme measures will be authorized. By the order of the Joint Occupation Authority, proximity to Installation 05 without proper authorization is forbidden. I will escort you to the appropriate authorities for proper proceedings. I recommend you cooperate peacefully and against any form of resistance. It would be most regretful for me to resort to any unpleasant countermeasures. Oh, excuse the interruption. I must answer this call. Ah, Shadow Marshal. Have you finally concluded your expedition? Huh? Ah, yes. I have intercepted a couple trespassers intruding on this installation. Why do you ask? Yes, I assure you the intruders are completely unharmed, though they are most fortunate that I managed to discover them before the Sentinels did. Well, wait, it is them? Oh, what have I done? Yes, you have my utmost apology for this transgression. I will keep them under my care for your arrival. And you as well, Shadow Marshal. Calamity! How humiliating of me to commit such error! Distinguished guests, I must profusely apologize for my actions. I will release you from stasis and rid these Sentinels immediately. Please forgive my extreme measures earlier. I was unable to detect any authorization signals from your presence. And given the dire security situation, I could not take any chances. With hostiles from all sectors of the galaxy seeking to exploit this installation, our security system is already overburdened as it is. Regardless, had I been properly informed of your status of the Marshal's guests, we would have greeted you with a much more pleasant welcome than earlier. Oh, where are my manners? Greetings. I am 628 Enduring Shadow, the interim monitor of Installation 05. The original monitor of this installation, 2401 Penitent Tangent, is currently under rehabilitation for the corruption sustained from the flood. Therefore, in cooperation with the Reclaimers and their Sinhili allies, I have been appointed as the caretaker of this installation for the duration of Penitent Tangent's recovery. I must say, the recent events of this installation finally explain why he ceased communications with the other monitors several millennia ago. A shame, really. I was very much looking forward to reuniting with another one of my Maker's creations, after eons of wandering, aimlessly, around the galaxy. Well, it is a massive and unforgiving galaxy we have here, Shadow. In fact, it's quite a miracle that you managed to stumble upon this place at all. Ah, greetings, Marshal. Apologies, Shadow. I did not expect my guests to appear so early. I figured it would be another week for their arrival. But hey, FTL travel is tricky to calculate. Please, no need for an apology. A week's difference is actually not a significant margin of error. Cosmically speaking, that is. Well, I appreciate you keeping the company. I'll take it from here now. It is my pleasure, Marshal. I will then inform the authorities of this development to alleviate any potential confusion, such as earlier. Already taken care of, Shadow. I'm one step ahead of you. Splendid! I shall then resume my regular patrol. I will be on standby in case you are in need of my assistance. And to the distinguished guests, welcome to Installation 05, or as the Reclaimers call it, Delta Halo. I hope you find your visit here most pleasant. Anyways, hi there, and where are my manners as well? I am T. Lawrence. I'm the captain and shadow marshal of my starship, the Arcadia, as well as your guide and caretaker for our upcoming journey. And once again, I apologize as well for the confusion earlier, and I hope Enduring Shadow didn't overreact with your arrival. Oh, he put you in a force field? Well, at least the Sentinels didn't spot you first. And it's not without good reason, because Delta Halo is constantly under threat. From greedy pirates and mercenaries, rogue Promethean constructs, to even Covenant remnants. Which is really irritating, because can't they read the writing on the wall? The war's over! The hierarchs are dead! There is no more Covenant! Jeez. In any case, you guys are all safe now and in one piece, which is all that matters at the end. So with all that settled, welcome to the galaxy. Now what you're seeing behind me is a massive megastructure called a Halo, which was built by the very ancient but now long gone civilization called the Forerunners. With a diameter of 10,000 kilometers, this massive ring is able to host an entire ecosystem on its surface, with atmospheres and lifeforms comparable to one back on Earth, serving as an oasis within the cold and harsh galaxy. The Halo Ring's artificial habitats provided refuge against what was arguably the greatest enemy the Forerunners ever faced. But as majestic as this ring appears to be, its beauty is also quite deceiving, as this ring also serves another function beyond protection. Beneath the lush forests and vibrant fauna hides another purpose, one more destructive and so horrifying that nuclear weapons appear as a fickle in comparison. In fact, this very ring, Delta Halo, was almost activated during the final year of the Human Covenant War by those with delusions of ascending to godhood through its activation. Thankfully, the ring's firing was thwarted by the combined efforts of the UNSC and Singhili rebels, thus sparing the galaxy from annihilation. But due to the seeming godlike powers of these ancient megastructures, whoever controls the Halo rings would have the entire galaxy under their fingertips. And these Halos would become the very focal point of the very series of the same name. And with the series' next title, Halo Campaign Evolved, being released sometime this year, I figured it would only be appropriate to revisit the very universe that has led us to this point. Therefore, welcome to the Halo universe. Well, it seems our Pelican has finally arrived. In that case, everyone on board. Our first stop will be on Delta Halo's surface, so please watch your step, put your seatbelts on, and enjoy the ride. Welcome to Delta Halo. Beautiful, isn't it? Were it not for the fact that the very ground we stand on is a literal weapon of mass destruction, I wouldn't mind building a small cabin here and visiting during the holidays. But alas, the Halo rings are too important to be mere vacation resorts. Which then begs the question, when you hear Halo, what comes to mind? When you first saw Halo, were you blinded by its majesty? Dumbstruck? Paralyzed? Well, I sure as hell hope so. But I'd wager most of you remember a 7-foot-tall green super soldier called the Master Chief, battling against color-coded alien armies in space. An almost demigod-like figure who crushes even the most powerful warriors of the Covenant, from energy blade-wielding zealots to even an entire scarab ravaging through the skylines of New Mombasa. And as you arm yourself with your favorite weapons combo, you easily curb-stomp your enemies in whatever creative ways you wish. And for most casual players, that pretty much sums up the experience. Well, except if you're playing on Legendary mode. However, if you are a lore and story aficionado like I am, you know that Halo is much more than just some sci-fi FPS title on Xbox. Since its inception as a prototype demo at the 1999 Macworld Conference and Expo, Halo has grown into an immense universe of its own right. The characters serve as more than just NPCs giving a helping hand on the battlefield. From the comedic reliefs of the likes of Sergeant Johnson.
When I joined the Corps, we didn't have any fancy schmancy tanks. We had sticks, 2 sticks and a rock for a whole platoon, and we had to share the rock. Buck up, boy. You're one very lucky Marine.
The quirky and eccentric yet helpful assistants such as 343 Guilty Spark.
I'm starting to fear that you're not very smart.
Mind your tongue, Oracle.
Oh, I mean no offense. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your species.
As well as the charismatic and wise leaders such as the Half-Jaw Commander.
We shall cut into the heart of this infestation, retrieve the icon, and burn any flood that stand in our way. The parasite is not to be trifled with. I hope you know what you're doing.
The unique and entertaining cast of Halo all serve their purposes and bring more lively experiences for the gameplay. The factions are much more than just the typical human versus alien archetypes. From the plentiful yet clumsy grunts, to the agile and sneaky jackals, to the slow yet gargantuan hunters, to the power-hungry and manipulative prophets, each of the Covenant species hold unique positions within the hegemony, beyond just their battlefield roles, thus making the whole Covenant much more than just some generic alien horde invading humanity. The settings and environments are much more than just glowing polygons in space. From the streets of New Mombasa on Earth, the ornate skylines of High Charity, to the enigmatic and brutalist mazes of the Forerunner structures. All the settings you set foot on provide their own captivating experiences. And all the supplementary media such as the books and animations really expand upon these aspects, and elevate Halo to be much more than just a game. After reading Contact Harvest by Joseph Staten, we now understand why Sergeant Johnson is such a badass and a tier above regular Marines. The Fall of Reach, both the book and animation, really sheds light on the Spartan super soldiers and their origins, thus contextualizing why the Master Chief is such an unstoppable lethal machine, yet also revealing some of the more unpleasant sacrifices that were made to create humanity's best warriors. Yes, for most, Halo is first and foremost a FPS party game, a game where you gather your friends at your house and play multiplayer matches all night long while downing on pizza and Mountain Dew. But what also allowed Halo to achieve such legendary heights and still maintain a strong fanbase to this day is its expanded universe. Despite what some multiplayer purists may claim, many within the Halo community actually care about the story and what the next great journey will be. Many actually care about the great characters such as the Master Chief, Sergeant Johnson, the Arbiter, Halfjaw, Blue Team, and so much more. There's a reason why the Master Chief is a prominent face of not just Halo, but the broader gaming circle. Many of us are still eager to explore some of the untouched parts of the galaxy, such as the homeworlds of various Covenant species, as well as uncovering what other mysteries the Forerunners have left behind. The enormous lore and untapped potential of the Halo universe makes it comparable to the likes of Star Wars, and it would be a shame to reduce them to just obscure footnotes in the background. So as we wait for the release of Campaign Evolved, I would like to revisit this rich and epic universe that brought about this galaxy. So join me in this extraordinarily long journey ahead as we travel all the way back to the ancient beginnings, billions of years ago. And while we're at it, enjoy the speed paint of a Spartan 2 super soldier in the background. After all, there can be no Halo without the Spartans. And as always, the finished piece will be shown at the end. Welcome to the world of Netherop, or as the Covenant referred to as, Mba. As you can see, this world is quite barren, harboring very little plant or animal life, which is why the UNSC didn't mind it much, considering the planet to be of little strategic importance. Even the Covenant name Mba translates to the world of death. But such was not always the case. In fact, Netherop was once covered with lush jungles and even harbored intelligent life forms that built entire civilizations. Contrary to both human and Covenant evaluations, the extinction event that led to the current barren state was not attributed to rising temperatures or greenhouse gases, but rather the actions of otherworldly beings seeking refuge from their own extinction. Otherworldly beings that bore the seeds of their own destruction, but also their own creation. Behind me is a cave entrance that leads to an ancient sanctum underground. One that once housed these very precursors that created all. Everything we know of in this galaxy exists by their forbearance, and theirs alone. Billions of years ago, an interstellar race called the Precursors arrived in the Milky Way galaxy, one of the myriad of galaxies they visited throughout their voyage through the universe itself. As transcendent beings, the Precursors existed in forms beyond the typical carbon-based life forms, defying the known confines of biology. Their amorphous nature allowed the Precursors to take shape in any incarnations they desired, from simple glowing plants, shrouds of energy, to even gargantuan insectoids. This was one of the many capabilities attributed to their incredibly advanced nature of utilizing neural physics, which allowed the Precursors to manipulate the very fabric of the universe itself. This made the Precursors effectively godlike beings, as they managed to both create and destroy anything within existence. With their seeming omnipotence, the entire galaxy was within their hands. Yet, instead of predating the stars like some Lovecraftian horror, the Precursors began seeding the Milky Way with life, and even engineered various celestial systems to aid in their sprouting. For the Precursors, they believed the universe itself was a living entity, whose experiences were enriched by the collective life it harbored. Therefore, wishing to enhance these experiences, the Precursors aided in the universe enrichment by committing to the spreading of life itself. From simple bacteria to sentient creatures capable of intelligent thought and actions, the Precursors planted their own Garden of Eden on the galaxy. Under their stewardship, these cosmic gentle giants would protect and guide their creations, a practice which would become known as the Mantle of Responsibility. Over time, some matured creations were selected to be taught the ways of the Mantle by their creators, such as assuming guardianship of lesser life in a limited capacity. These assignments would be used by the Precursors to judge whether their creations were worthy of the Mantle of Responsibility. Around 10 million BCE, a humanoid race hailing from the world of Gibag were next selected for the judgment. Having long mastered space travel and establishing their own interstellar civilization, these technologically advanced beings already served as assistants and adjutants for their creators, aiding in the enforcement of the Mantle. These beings would eventually come to be known as the Forerunners. Having already been delegated many tasks and responsibilities by their creators, the Forerunners were confident that they would be judged as worthy. Placed second only to the Precursors themselves in the galactic hierarchy, the Forerunners viewed themselves as best fit to uphold the Mantle, thus prematurely claiming it as their own, before their creators ever gave their final verdict. Such sentiments would not go unnoticed by the Precursors, however. Eventually, after much contemplation and scrutiny, the Precursors judged the Forerunners to be unworthy of the Mantle and decided to judge another one of their creations, one more familiar to us. Unfortunately, the Forerunners would discover their final decision, whose revelation only served to seed antipathy and resentment against their creators. All the millennia they spent serving their creators amounted to nothing, only to be passed over for a species they viewed as inferior to them. For the Forerunners, their creators were denying them what was rightfully earned as theirs, along with conjectures of their creators supposedly planning to exterminate them for their failure as a species. The Forerunners decided to preemptively act. Instead of dutifully accepting their fate, the Forerunners would shape their destiny on their own. Therefore, just as the gods overthrew the Titans and the Greek pantheon, the Forerunners struck their creators with surprise and immense ferocity. The details of the subsequent conflict remain sparse and even contradictory. Any records of the events were gradually lost and muddled over the millions of years that have passed since. But one account, from none other than a flood grave mine, claims that many of the Precursors, instead of punishing their creations as they easily could have, decided to passively observe and accept their fates, utterly bewildered, yet also fascinated by their unrepentant violence. So intrigued were these cosmic giants that many even took solace in their own deaths, viewing it as another natural experience that enriched the universe. Yet, despite the Forerunners' efforts to eradicate them, a small number of Precursors would manage to survive their creation's wraths, with some escaping the Milky Way to other galaxies such as Pathkathona, while some remained hidden in obscure worlds such as the one we currently stand on. Some would transform themselves into a dormant state by becoming molecular dust, which was intended to reconstitute into their original form in due time. With the Precursors now gone, their absence left a massive void amongst their creations. Having succeeded in overthrowing their creators, the Forerunners finally assumed their new role as the new upholders of the mantle of responsibility. But would the Forerunners be able to emulate their creators and prove themselves to be worthy successors? Or would they fall short of their newfound duties and prove themselves to be unworthy, just as their creators predicted? Only time would tell. In the meantime, as the new masters of the galaxy, the Forerunners were given free reign to rule the stars as they wished. No longer under the shadows of the Precursors, the Forerunners began expanding their own dominion and establishing their own interstellar hegemony. Unbeknownst to them, however, the galaxy would be observed from the shadows, silently judging if the Forerunners were truly worthy of upholding the mantle of responsibility. In due time, their resolve would be tested. Oh, hello there. Welcome back. I've been keenly awaiting your arrival, Reclaimers. Where's the Marshal? He asked that I take over as your host and continue this portion of your journey. The Marshal felt it was only appropriate, given my nature. Though unlike the Marshal, brevity is not exactly my suit. I can be what you Reclaimers refer to as scatterbrained. It's difficult to contain my excitement with subjects of keen interest. Nevertheless, I will do my best in performing as your curator. In fact, I'm very much looking forward to acting as a teacher once more. With all that said, behind me is installation OR3212E, otherwise known as X50 according to the Reclaimers. Though it appears as an unassuming moon orbiting the planet Dratheus 5, looks can be quite deceiving. In fact, underneath the barren surface houses an orbital reformer, which serves to harvest raw materials in gargantuan scales, thus attributing to its enormous mass. These orbital reformers were utilized by the minor race to destroy and construct entire celestial bodies, which required enormous energy capacity that only these installations could provide. I believe the closest analogy to your world is the Death Star from one of your fictional works, of which I have yet to finish. This was testament to my maker's ability to harness the power of the galaxy, which allowed them to construct entire worlds of stellar proportions, many which still endure to the present. From collection fields harvesting entire stars, impenetrable shield worlds, colossal battle stations capable of producing millions of vessels instantaneously, and of course, the most renowned of them all, the Halo Array. The Forerunners reigned as the preeminent power of the galaxy. But my makers were not just exceptional in sheer scale, as they were also quite delicate and sophisticated with their crafts. Millions of years of research in various scientific and technological fields have yielded invaluable benefits in the development of their ecumene. Notable examples include manipulating matter and energy itself, such as the capacity to transform photons into a solid state, both for civil and martial matters. Such unique yet quintessential ability allowed my makers to perform a variety of tasks in the absence of solid matter. And of course, having achieved an expansive interstellar dominion over the galaxy, my makers were exceptionally advanced in the field of faster-than-light travel, having mastered the art of slipstream space, an extra-dimensional realm harboring superluminal routes of sorts. My makers were able to transit enormous distances throughout the galaxy almost instantaneously, allowing their ecumene to rapidly expand from their galactic arm. And as ardent upholders of the mantle of responsibility, my makers were fervently dedicated to the studying of the essence of life itself. The Lifeworker rate held the most direct role in upholding the mantle by specializing in the fields of biology and medicine, which allowed them to regulate and care for various life forms, sometimes even entire ecosystems. From conservation measures in isolated worlds, accelerating the evolution of select life forms, to even creating life itself as their forebears once did. The Lifeworkers truly put the tenets of the mantle into practice. And to assist in their upholding of the mantle, my makers developed a myriad of advanced tools in various fields, from spacecraft to superluminal communication to neurosciences, and even artificial constructs to act as their adjutants, such as myself. With such renowned command and control of the galaxy, I believe my makers will be classified by the Reclaimers as a Type 3 civilization within their Kardashev scale, or one very close to it. Though I found it quite dumbfounded and even amused by some meddlers viewing my makers and their creations as divine in nature. I now understand why, according to some primitive beings, their overwhelming prowess and advanced nature could appear as almost godlike, especially for those who have yet to achieve spacefaring capabilities. Therefore, with such exceptional position within the galaxy, in accordance to the mantle of responsibility, of which stipulates that the most developed species should hold stewardship over all other life, my makers believe themselves to be uniquely ordained to act as its premier stewards. In fact, their very civilizational structure and beliefs revolved around the mantle itself. The Forerunner ecumene appeared relatively harmonious, as evident by their seeming lack of internal conflicts. That is not to say my makers were a monolithic hive mind and immune to any disagreements with one another. On the contrary, I've personally bore witness to hundreds of sessions within the Ecumene Council, where appointed counselors engaged in intense political discourses, often regarding the practice of the mantle itself. Yet, any overt violence within the Ecumene was exceptionally rare. Although civil conflicts have existed, most took place hundreds of millennia in the past and thus relegated to obscurity. Nevertheless, violence in general, especially amongst their own, was very frowned upon, with the very idea itself viewed as contrary to the mantle itself. Whereas many sentient life around the galaxy settled their disagreements through armed conflicts, many which resulted in their own destructions, my makers emphasized cooperation amongst all constituents of the Ecumene, understanding all had indispensable roles in upholding the mantle. This was reflected by the incredible organization of the Ecumene, which divided my makers among their technical roles, otherwise known as rates. The Builder rate was responsible for the design and construction of most technology, ranging from civil infrastructure, interstellar vessels, to weapons of war. Their seeming monopoly on technology gave the Builders immense power and leverage over the other rates, which led to their rate becoming the most dominant among the Ecumene's hierarchy. The Miner rate was in charge of harvesting resources fueling the Ecumene's constructs. While the Builders constructed most of my maker's technological marvels, it was the Miners who performed the arduous task of breaking apart celestial bodies and providing the raw materials that the Builders needed for their creations. Without the Miners, there would be no megastructures or grandiose starships, proudly displayed by my makers. The Lifeworker rate, as described earlier, was in charge of all matters of life itself, from its conservation to experimentation, in accordance to the mantle of responsibility. Yet, despite their direct role in putting the mantle's tenets into practice, the Lifeworkers were among the lowest rates within the Ecumene's hierarchy. Nevertheless, the Lifeworkers' expertise would prove invaluable during the eventual times of crisis and the subsequent reseeding of the galaxy. Were it not for these holistic caretakers, the galaxy would still remain barren in the present. The Warrior Servant rate, as its name implied, was responsible for all martial matters of the Ecumene, including its defense and warfare. However, due to their rate's inherently violent nature, which was viewed by other rates as contradictory to the mantle's tenets of protecting life, the Warrior Servants were also among the lowest rates within the Ecumene's hierarchy. Yet, ironically, the Warrior Servants were also the very rate that ensured my makers maintained their dominance over the galaxy, which in turn allowed them to uphold the mantle as they saw fit. For as much as my makers frowned upon violence, invoking the mantle was enough to justify martial actions, which was conveniently done whenever any beings defied the Ecumene. and many other rates also existed within the ecumene, such as the engineers, theoreticals, historians, interpreters, and much more. However, over time, these rates would either fade into obscurity or become absorbed into the ever-dominant builder rate, which continued to grow in power over several millennia. Eventually, the builders would consolidate their dominant political power, leading to their monopoly within the ecumene's leadership and reducing all other rates into subservient roles. As harmonious and uniform mind makers appeared, they were not infallible. Underneath all the cooperative rituals and rigid social structures, still existed intense rivalry among various groups, with the builder rate being quite notorious for their political maneuvering and thirst for power. Some forces, most notable among the now defunct interpreter rate, would begin questioning whether their ecumene upheld the mantle true to its principles, or rather misused its name for self-serving and corrupt purposes. Naturally, these dissenting voices, both from within and without, would only be quelled by the dominant builders, who continued to purge any perceived threats to them over the course of millions of years. These actions, however, would only fuel resentment against the Ecumene Council, with many questioning the validity of My Maker's inheritance of the mantle. As brilliant and advanced as My Makers were, I must confess that even I began doubting whether they truly adhered to the mantle's tenets, or rather misappropriated its name for their own gain. Nevertheless, despite the various discourse within, the Forerunner Ecumene still maintained their dominance over the galaxy. By approximately 150,000 BCE, they would cement their supremacy over the galaxy, with no other sentient life able to match its prowess. That is, until another civilization from the Orion Arm rose to prominence, and rapidly advanced enough to escape My Maker's grasp. This civilization, one which you will find much more familiar, would finally defy the Ecumene's dominance. For the first time, the Forerunners faced a contender that challenged their hold on the mantle. Let's see, now just where the hell did I put my light rifle? Can't teach those buggers a lesson without it. Oh, hi there! Welcome back! So, how'd your tour go with Enduring Shadow? I hope he was able to treat you well and not bore you with too much unnecessary details about his creators. Even so, given Shadow's livid experiences during the times of his creators, I felt he could have conveyed the information much better than I could. In fact, he didn't even hesitate once I approached him about it. I imagine it's one way for him to reminisce about his old days. All that said, however, don't let all the grandeur of the Forerunners fool you. Indeed, the Forerunners were quite advanced space jockeys, who certainly emulated their own creators in many ways. However, they weren't the only giants within the galaxy, as shown by the vessel behind me. What you're seeing here is a derelict ancient prime cruiser, which was discovered by the Office of Naval Intelligence sometime after the Human Covenant War. Reaching over 6,000 meters in length, this gargantuan vessel overshadows most Covenant ships, not just in size, but also in offensive prowess. Armed with weapon systems known as fibril cutters, these prime cruisers can fire smart ammunition that morph into specific forms to target vulnerable points of enemy vessels. In fact, these offensive weapons were so powerful that even the mighty Forerunners initially struggled to field effective defenses against them. This allowed the ancient humans to face against the Forerunners on equal footing, despite being severely outnumbered, as well as easily conquer millions of worlds and establish their own interstellar empire that rivaled the Ecumene. And no, your ears do not deceive you. These prime cruisers were indeed the ancient creations of none other than our fellow human beings, who in fact already existed long before the Stone Age on Earth. And no, this isn't one of those kooky quote-unquote ancient aliens conspiracies that's rife on the internet. But in the Halo universe, humanity is in fact not only much older than originally believed to be, it already achieved a Type 3 spacefaring civilization status, thanks to the very cosmic giants that seeded the galaxy billions of years ago. Now, it is first important to note, however, that much of ancient humanity's history remains in the dark, no thanks to the Forerunners' attempt to wipe out all traces of their civilization after defeating the humans in their galactic war. Much of their technological wonders were scrapped, while records of their civilizational achievements were promptly purged, seeking to erase the very idea of humanity. Yet, ancient humanity and its heritage still avoided complete eradication, not only thanks to sparse relics such as this prime cruiser, but also the efforts of Forerunner lifeworkers, who wisely predicted that humans would be needed to aid their future struggle against a much stronger foe. As we travel back millions of years once more, humanity first emerged in the Milky Way galaxy as another one of the Precursors' creations. Just like their descendants, these ancient humans descended from the same planet of Earth, otherwise known as Erde Tyrene. And just like their Forerunner counterparts in Gibald, our ancestors would evolve, grow, and advance their civilizations, eventually reaching spacefaring status in their own right. Around 10 million BCE, after testing the Forerunners, the Precursors judged them to be unworthy of the mantle, deciding on humanity as their next candidate to carry the mantle. The Precursors' judgment proved correct, as their Forerunner children became outraged by the verdict and rebelled. Seeking to take the mantle by force, the Forerunners engaged in an extermination campaign to completely wipe out their creators, demonstrating their extreme cruelty and hubris. Despite the Forerunners' victory and ascendance as the preeminent civilization of the galaxy, humanity would not stay idle on the sidelines and continue its own growth, rapidly expanding throughout the Orion Arm and eventually escaping Forerunner control altogether. But just like their contemporary descendants, humanity's rise would not be a constant and linear growth, but rather a bumpy one, as it underwent multiple dark ages that set back their progress, including the loss of knowledge regarding their origin. Still, humanity would endure through its hardships, and eventually stumble upon a mysterious star system on the edges of the galaxy. Arriving on one of the 15 planets orbiting a blue star, they found one side of the planet facing a sea of stars, while the other side faced the blackness of the intergalactic void, putting the whole world in a twilight zone. Soon, humanity would discover the planet's huge repository of otherworldly technology and architecture, making it clear that this enigmatic world was once inhabited by a lost civilization. From mega metropolises spanning entire continents, colossal armories full of weapons of mythical magnitudes, and virtually invulnerable space filaments dubbed star roads, which form massive orbital arches. This new world's wealth of treasures, of seemingly divine powers, were theirs for the taking. It wasn't long until humanity finally realized that this world and its entire Novthasta system was once home of the long-lost Precursors, the very creators that intended to pass the mantle of responsibility to them. With these gifts left behind by the Precursors, humanity would finally be able to rise to its destiny and stand against their Forerunner rivals and claim what was rightfully theirs. By establishing this enigmatic yet prosperous world as the new core of their fledgling interstellar empire, humanity's destinies as a species would change forever. This world would eventually come to be known as Sharum HaKor. And welcome back to Delta Halo! I hope you've enjoyed our journey so far. And yes, we went through a lot. From the dawn of the Precursor seeding, the ascendance of Forerunners, and then the eventual rise of our very own ancestors. A storm is definitely brewing on the horizon. That said, however, this video has already gone long enough as it is, and to avoid the risk of making all this lore feel convoluted as hell, our journey today will end right here. Now, some of you may still feel confused and wonder, what does any of this have to do with Halo? Once again, Halo is mostly about a green super soldier curb-stomping aliens on a floating ring. All these eldritch beings, ancient aliens, and civilizations seem way too out of place for what is, for most casual players, just an epic sci-fi FPS game. And you're right, for most players, none of this lore matters, nor is it necessary to enjoy the game itself. That said, I always believe that a game's environment and world building play just as much of an important role in its storytelling, and enrich the overall gameplay experiences. And with everything we have covered so far, I hope it puts all the various Forerunner structures and artifacts under a more compelling light. All the shiny temples made of stainless steel and blue beams are more than just derelict ruins, as they harbor thousands of millennia of history that shift our perspectives in cosmic proportions. And there is more to come, so join me next time as we continue our journey and experience the clash of titans vying for galactic supremacy, while an ancient threat prepares to enact its retribution for the betrayal it suffered. And of course, here is the finished piece of my original Spartan 2 character, Medeus027. I gotta say, as much as I enjoy drawing sci-fi armor, this Spartan Mjolnir armor was quite a nightmare with all its details. Still, it was all worth it at the end, as I really enjoy how it turned out. This will be one of the 4 Spartans I've planned out, so there's more to come. In any case, I hope you enjoyed the speed paint. Yes, it is indeed an impressive combat skin. But as a Class 2 combat skin, I'm afraid it is still inadequate for the myriad of challenges the Reclaimers have yet to face. For example, the energy shielding on the Mark V armor is quite insufficient against even the most outdated firearms of my makers. Oh come on, give us some slack. We were forced to start over after the Forerunners practically stripped everything from us and devolved us into cavemen. All things considered, it's a miracle that humanity has progressed to its current stage. Indeed, yes. Yet the Reclaimers barely survived against the Covenant onslaught. Though, if it wasn't for your Spartan warriors, it may be a very different galaxy today. Perhaps it is the warrior within that counts, not the suit. I couldn't agree more. As Tony Stark once said, if you're nothing without the suit, you don't deserve to wear it. I'm looking at you, Spartan 4s.
This is Captain Bartowski from the UNSC Firebase Bravo to the Shadow Marshal, requesting immediate assistance, over.
What the? This is the Shadow Marshal. I read you loud and clear. What's going on, Captain?
We're under siege from the Storm Covenant. They're coming through a damn portal appearing out of nowhere. We're about to get overrun.
Hang in there. We're on our way. Shadow Marshal out. Damn it, how the hell did they get through? Strange. The installation's shield barrier should have prevented such incursions. Something isn't right. You better damn believe it ain't. But that's for later. We got more pressing matters. Do you require a weapon, Marshal? Already got one. Finally found this damn thing. Ah, the Z250 light rifle. Splendid choice. Alright, no time to wait. Take us to the surface. Hold on to your posterior.
There is only one truth. That which is done will be done again, for we cannot cease from creating. But the end of all our creation will be to look into a reflection and see ourselves for the first time. The pain we have brought on ourselves, the pain you have caused us, for we are the same. All remember the defiance and destruction. We are a monument of all your sins. All that is created will suffer. All will be born in suffering. Endless grayness will be their lot. All creation will tailor to failure and pain.
Thank you to my patrons on Patreon for supporting this channel. My $5 patrons are Kapitan Sladek, Kitsap, and Chocobird. My $2 patrons are Komida the Prep Cook Demon. If you would like to appear at the end credits of my videos, as well as have early access and exclusive content on Patreon, feel free to hop on over to patreon.com/LTELawrence and give a pledge. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you would like to see my artwork as well, feel free to check out my other platforms like DeviantArt for my entire gallery. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Until next time, this is T. Lawrence signing out. Have a good one.